I've been a police officer for over a decade, and in that time, I've seen things that would make most people lose sleep. Drugs, violence, accidents, the darkest sides of humanity, but nothing has stayed with me like the night I was forced to confront something I still can't explain. It happened about 6 years ago on a quiet night shift. I was patrolling the outskirts of town. The area is mostly rural, long stretches of farmland, broken down barns, and houses that look like they hadn't been touched in decades. Dispatch came over the radio with a strange call. A neighbor had reported hearing some screams from an old farmhouse on Willow Creek Road. The thing is, that house has been abandoned for years. Kids in town used to whisper it was haunted. I always dismissed that talk as just local legend, but I didn't have the luxury of ignoring the call. I pulled up to the house just after midnight. The place looked like something out of a horror movie. 2 stories tall, the paint peeled away long ago, windows boarded up except for one single pane on the second floor. The front porch sagged under its own weight, the kind of place you just know has a history. I stepped out of my cruiser and immediately noticed something strange. No crickets, no wind through the trees. The night was dead silent. If you've ever been out in the country, you know how unusual that is. It was like the world itself was holding its breath. I approached the front door, flashlight in one hand, the other resting on my holster. The wood creaked under my boots. I knocked once, twice, no answer. But when I reached for the front door handle, it turned easily, unlocked. The air inside was heavy, like walking into a basement that hadn't been opened in years. My light cut through the dust, landing on faded wallpaper, broken furniture, and debris scattered across the floor. Every step I took echoed through the house. "Police department," I called out. No response. Only the groan of an old house settling. I moved deeper inside. The layout was typical. A front living room, kitchen to the left, stairs leading up to the bedrooms. That's when I heard it. A soft, muffled sob coming from upstairs. My training kicked in. I announced myself again, louder this time. "Police! If someone's up there, call out." Silence. Then the sobbing again, this time clear, like a young woman crying. I started up the stairs, each step protesting under my weight. Halfway up, my flashlight flickered. I smacked it with my palm and it came back. I tried to shake off the unease creeping over me, telling myself it was just faulty wiring. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out in front of me, 4 doors, 2 on each side. The sobbing was louder now, coming from the last room on the left. I approached slowly, weapon drawn just in case. The door was cracked open. I pushed it with the barrel of my gun and stepped inside. The room was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no windows, just bare wooden floors and peeling walls, and yet, the sound of the crying still filled the room. But there was no one in there. My heart hammered in my chest. I swept the flashlight across the room. Nothing. But then, in the corner of my eye, I caught movement, a shadow darting across the wall, except there was nothing there to cast it. The crying stopped, dead silence again. That's when the temperature dropped. I could see my own breath, hanging in the beam of my flashlight. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave, but I forced myself to stay. I was an officer. This was my job. I stepped further inside and the door slammed shut behind me. The bang was so loud it made me jump. I spun around, yanking at the handle. It wouldn't budge. It was like something was holding it shut from the other side. And then, I heard whispering. Dozens of voices overlapping, hushed but frantic. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like they were all around me, above, below, right next to my ear. My flashlight flickered again, then went out completely. I was plunged in the darkness. For a few seconds I just froze. The voices grew louder, more urgent, and then I felt it. A hand, cold, clutching my wrist. I jerked back, swinging my arm wildly, but there was nothing there. The voices stopped all at once. Silence. And then a sound that made my blood run cold. A laugh, high-pitched, childlike, right behind me. I spun around, my back against the wall, gun raised, flashlight useless in that moment. I was certain I wasn't alone, but I couldn't see anything. Finally, with everything I had, I ran my shoulder into the door. It burst open and I stumbled into the hallway. Grasping for air, the temperature instantly returned to normal. The voices were gone. I didn't waste another second. I bolted downstairs, through the front door, and straight to my cruiser. Only when I slammed the door shut behind me did I realize my hands were shaking uncontrollably. I reported back to dispatch, told them that the house was clear, there was no signs of anyone inside. I didn't mention the rest. How could I? Who would believe me? The next morning I did some digging. Turns out the farmhouse had a history. Back in 1950s, a family lived there. The father was an angry, violent man. One night he lost control and murdered his wife, his daughter, and before turning the gun on himself. Since then, locals claim they'd seen strange lights in the windows, heard voices at night. That's why the house was abandoned. I told myself it was just a story, that what I experienced was the result of exhaustion and an overactive imagination. But deep down, I know what I felt. The cold grip on my wrist, the laughter in the dark, the voices that surrounded me. I've faced dangerous people before. I've stared down the barrel of a gun, but nothing has ever terrified me like that night at the Willow Creek farmhouse. Even now, years later, when I drove past the road on patrol, I avoid looking at the house because I know something still waits inside, and it doesn't want to be forgotten.